Может, вот так. Но тогда... Ой, так сложно все. И так сложно, и... Как должно быть слышно, то есть да, это нормально работает. Ох. С предыдущей программы мы так ничего не разобрались. Блендер, которая... Ничего не разобрались. То есть там... как бы это объяснить? Много ничего непонятно. То есть как бы и... Ну так, посмотрели гайд какой-то, и там понятно, что, в общем-то... Не скоро понимание придет, но... Поэтому нужно теперь к следующей программе перейти, то есть вот к этой. И потихонечку я ее включал. Когда там месяц назад, 2 или 3, или вообще уже не помню когда. Но как включил, так и выключил. И это не значит, что... Это не значит, что теперь ничего не надо делать. А надо именно продолжать. Так вот неудобно. Надо же поставить микрофон, чтобы и слышно было, и видно было. Вот я вот ругался про то, что я и так слепну, и здесь такой шрифт просто. Это надо, это чтобы оценить, насколько здесь все ужасно выглядит, нужно просто, наверное, да и, наверное, на стриме тоже видно, да, то есть это абсолютно никуда не годится, такое отношение. Вот и там не пойми, как это крутилось, и здесь на какую кнопку передвигать. Надо все вот эти хаткейт настраивать, чтобы хоть как-то понять, что происходит. Решетка. Абсолютно, вот как включил, так и выключил. То есть абсолютно ничего не помню, что здесь, чего. Какие-то переставлять. Тут ниточки, там ниточки, то есть везде. Видимо, она таким образом не будет работать. Ругается, да. Для этого существуют гайды. Для этого существуют гайды. Компьютерные системы тоже так не начали читать, но надо читать обязательно. И потом и Android тоже, и Android, и плюса, и все вот это вместе. Так у нас ничто, так сказать, с места не сдвинется, если вот таким образом все делать. Я он кручу, но ничего не происходит. Значит, 2 раза ткнуть можно передвигать. Ой, все сломалось. Вернуться назад. Кнопки ER не работают, они вообще за что-то другое отвечают. Нужно было какого-то пингвина из Лего создать по гайду. Я помню, и в чем еще проблема случилась? В том, что я типа делал этого пингвина, делал, и какую-то часть сделал, но потом она повисла или что-то подобное случилось, и там половина пропала. И вот это прям очень печально. Я его теперь вообще не могу найти, да? А, вот он. Так я в этом ничего абсолютно понять не могу. Здесь тоже вон нитки какие-то. Еще все так вот. Главное все за... Ой, нет, это слишком. Тут какая-то экранная лупа нужна в любом случае, потому что... Да, где-то скачать опять... Скачать надо опять этот гайд. Вот в блендере все-таки я ругался, что типа... Я ругался, что в блендере гайда нет, а он там был, оказывается. На ютубе. Ну, такой, более-менее такой адекватный, то есть. А вот здесь уже вопрос.
My name is Robert McGee. I'm here today to introduce you to the secret language of Houdini. I'm going to assume that a lot of you are getting started with Houdini for the first time. You can pass attributes through there. And I say and we're going to go and now we're going to say we're going to feed that in instead and in all the visual effects stuff in Houdini. You can see that this object has not going to bump up and down that much. So now we've got the ball sort of bouncing up and down as it rolls. But it's going above and below
Очень
the
тихо.
ground. We'd like to limit that a little bit. Use the word attribute in this context.
Тоже какой-то движок рендера есть. Свой. Наверное, мы до него не дойдем. Ну да и так вот часика два, то есть посмотрим. Чтобы просто потом еще раз включить, если еще раз будет. Вот есть какие-то туториалы. И видео туториалы тоже. Типа видео, может, и я очень долго. Типа, может, я просто очень долго его читал. Там всего-то минут на 50 было. Ну вот этот, блядь, интерфейс, я реально ослепну, блядь, то есть от этой хуйни. Я там как пытался, чтобы побольше сделать, но типа если сделать шрифт больше, то ничего не вместится. Там Не получается. Панель, может, поубирать можно как-то, я не знаю. Питон 2.7 доисторический. Что здесь 2 Python 2, что вот там в Unreal Engine тоже 2 Python, то есть как бы старый. Там, ну, как бы печально, то есть третий все-таки. Там вообще разница в том, что там нужно в скобки, в кавычки писать или как-то так, когда принт пишешь. Вот и вся разница, по-моему. Ну, помимо того, что какие-то библиотеки там все эти асинхронные и прочее там нет во второй версии. И много чего еще нет. Блять, я не могу на это смотреть больше 5 минут. Не могу я, сука, блять, на это смотреть. Мы начинали отсюда, скачали PDF-файл. Вот этот вот. А начинать, наверное, надо было с видео. Да, я скачал этот overview. Я скачал overview, а мне нужно было не overview скачивать. Типа это даже не весь этот туториал, это 1/4 от туториала. Долго с этим разбираться. Или нет. Я что-то другое скачивал, я нет скачивал. Я сразу с утки, наверное, скачал. Ох, и здесь шрифт такой же мелкий. Свинья вон какая-то. И вот если земли можно здесь захуячить, это прям очень хорошо. Там для земли какая-то другая программа есть, называется какой-то World Builder или как-то так. Если можно было вот одно меню просто на весь экран развернуть, а все остальное свернуть и убрать вот эти вот, типа, на какую-то кнопку, чтобы переключать просто, а не чтобы оно все на одном, оно не вмещается сюда. Просто не вмещается. Вот зачем, ну зачем вот нужно вот это, вот эти вот меню лишние абсолютно. Ох, блядь. Если хоть что-то сделаем за 2 часа, это уже будет хорошо.
Connected to build networks, and each network defines a recipe, a polygon limit. So we can increase that to 50 million polygons. So, and I can take that instancing, it's
Вот, это
fast
то,
and it's
что я...
snappy, and it's
Та-та-та-та,
doing the
PDF
job that we
какой-то
need.
был вот именно по этому поводу, видимо.
Promote it over.
Полчаса это занимает, а я... Не такое ощущение,
Which
что
means all the
полгода
assets
мне это
benefit from the
отняло.
change that you make. We can also bring over the texture one, so that would allow us to reveal a second shape here. This is a sort of a statue of a rhinoceros, and we want to brickify that. So the way we would do that is we would shift select the rhino, and we would say, bring that selection up. And there we go. We're going to create that custom shape. So the custom shape is now feeding in there. We can hide the original rhino. And then there we go. We've got the brickified shape. Now, the one thing you'll notice isn't coming across is we're not getting the point colors. We're not getting the colored texture. Procedural dependency graph. This is a technology we brought out recently. It's a section of Houdini called TOPS, or task operators. And it works a little bit differently in the fact that it connects out to the farm. So the way it works is you've got these new nodes called TOPS. And when you feed something into them, you can say, how many tasks do I have? So this thing says, okay, I've got a certain number of tasks. And then you've got a certain amount of nodes on your, or cores on your computer. So you get a scheduler, this is the local scheduler, and you say, give me 1/4 of the nodes of the cores that are available. So I'm just going to take 3 of them. And so it'll run through the different tasks 3 at a time until it finishes. If you want to, you can go as high as all the cores except for 1, and that would speed things up. Now you've got more of these tasks being done at the same time and spitting out a result. Of course, PDG is not really about working on a local computer. Its strength comes when you go to a larger farm and using something like Deadline or HQ, and now suddenly you can see this thing lighting up because it's just doing tasks left, right, and center all on different computers and so on. So this takes the proceduralism, what Houdini does, and extends it out into a larger context. And then one of those, and I middle click on here. Well, if I left click on these, they're just going to look like the models, because the first little bricks, characters in them, maybe they USD as well. Again, you should watch the full presentation to really get the lay of the land, but definitely an exciting next step for Houdini within a pipeline. And of course, these tools are so artist-friendly that, again, that pipeline in a box, the artist being able to sit down and have as sophisticated a pipeline at their disposal as a big studio does, that's a pretty exciting thing. That Houdini can help you build the ideal pipeline in a box, and I hope I've been able to illuminate you a little bit on what those possibilities are and how you can begin to get started.
Hello everyone, and this is an introduction.
Типа более новый, ноябрь 19-го, может поновее получше, я не знаю.
So the idea is that
Может без разницы с какого начать.
if you're using any other 3D software and you've always wanted to learn Houdini, then this series should help you get started. So with the first video, we're going to take a look at the absolute basics, which is the user interface and the navigation within the software, and a few other concepts. All right, so where do we begin? The first question is, what is Houdini, right? So Houdini is a 3D animation software, pretty much like Max or Maya or Blender or Cinema 4D or Lightwave, any of those. There are two major differences between those softwares and Houdini. The first one is that Houdini is entirely node-based. So if you look at it, this is essentially what Houdini looks like. Okay, it's essentially you're building using nodes. So that is the first thing.
Да, действительно, вся программа это вот эти вот хреновины, то есть, а все остальное это просто как картинка ненужная. Ну и типа покажите мне вот это основное окно на весь экран, а чтобы все остальное я вообще не видел. Потому что это, мне не знаю, как это объяснить, типа, я вообще сейчас уже все. Где это находится? Уже не вернуть назад. Но. Типа, покажите мне вот это окно на весь экран, пожалуйста. Никто мне не даст такую возможность.
The other thing is what is written directly over here, which is it is fully procedural. So what does that mean? Like, what do you mean by procedural? So what that means is that rather than just taking an object and starting to manipulate, you generate a set of rules or commands. And these rules or commands are kind of independent of whatever input you have, and they can be transferred to whatever other object that you want, and you can keep replicating the same effect. So for example, let's say I've just created.
Дальше там что тут? Какой-то из этих двух. Начните тут. И начнем, где говорят. То есть, вот это я начал, мне что-то... Хотя, может, с видео лучше бы было. Ничего не работает. Не работает этот Vimeo ваш.
Welcome, my name is Robert McGee. I work at Side Effects Software, and I'm here today to talk to you about Houdini Foundations. We put a lot of tutorials out on our website at various different levels, and the Houdini Foundation series is designed to be an introductory set of tutorials to get people started when they're first learning Houdini. So this particular presentation is based on a new tutorial we just posted up last week. And the general concept is Houdini as a pipeline in a box, where we're going to look at the nodes, networks, and assets that you use in Houdini and talk about how they go beyond just creating end product, but actually about how they create workflows and how those workflows can help you in a pipeline, whether you're a small individual artist doing your own work or whether you're a larger studio trying to pipe lots of work through the system. So the three products we're going to talk about primarily in here are Houdini, obviously, Houdini Engine, which is a very important technology we have that sort of works under the hood, and PDG, the procedural dependency graph. And we'll talk about how that can fit into this as well. And pretty much we're going to build everything from scratch. That way you'll be able to see how we go from our first node all the way to the system that we pipe through PDG. So just define some concepts and ideas within Houdini. Like we said, it's a node-based system, which means that everything you create in Houdini creates a node. These nodes get connected to build networks, and each network defines a recipe, something that can be done over and over again.
Процедурный японский
And that
замок,
ability
как
to use it
будто,
over and over again,
помню, в финалке в этой 14 был такой подземелье. Больше похоже на какой-то это самое. Ну хотя бы как-то картинку на звук нормально наложить, я не знаю. Звездные войны какие-то.
Hi guys, I'm happy to announce I'm coming back with a series of tutorials dedicated to environment. In this series, I'm gonna talk about the process of making my latest picture, which is a project I created to develop a full environment workflow for my short film within Houdini 18. From terrain creation, asset management, procedural shaders, lighting for large environment, detail sketching, tool creation, there is a lot to cover. I would advise to have some solid foundation in Houdini and height field. If you never tried that, I highly like branching going on, but we'll go through that later. Mechanic wall, like we see in the reference, finishing with a tear, cast some shadows on my tear, another height field on top of that. I really and we're done. Some more interesting breakups. You can actually do a soft transform. So we got a little subnetwork that's something sharper. Let's try again.
Но вот этот мужик сидит типа с таким же интерфейсом, с дефолтным. У него, по-моему, еще меньше экран, то есть еще меньше, чем у меня. Может, у него видно больше, но не так, как это самое.
So obviously you may want to use the poly radius and see how it's looking with 35%. So it still managed to keep all the main feature, and it's definitely lighter than the very high mesh density. So if we try 2%, it's now looking very low res, which is very cool if we want to just load, let's say, the low res version of the terrain for animation purpose or previs, or just make the scene a lot lighter. Hi guys, I might do the trick, and same for the area lights that we create.
Там уже он огромная какая-то хрень.
Alright. Okay, time to launch a render. Nice. Can change a bit.
Долго будет рендер проводиться, там он 0,3%.
Pretty sweet already. Let's disable receive shadows so we can save a bit of render time. And we're gonna create some light linking. So I'm gonna create a new panel with the mantra rendering light linker, and
Хочется на конечный результат посмотреть.
Rendering geo. So that's looking pretty cool. We even got some kind of god rays and stuff, but the atmosphere isn't quite there yet. So we're gonna see how we can improve that. So I'm dropping another environment light that I'm gonna call Atmos Fog, and I'm gonna do a light linking just on the fog. So basically it's just eliminating this fog. So we can crank up the intensity a little bit. Getting better. We don't still feel the sunset vibe, but it's getting there. Trying to balance, and ended up with this render. Was pretty happy with it. Obviously it's still not perfect, but it's a good base to play with in comp if we want, and like add some more clouds, why not, and so on. So that's pretty much it for today, guys. I hope this was useful. Now that we got a base for lighting, we will get started with the fun stuff like textures and shade.
Welcome back to Applied. We'll start by learning how to create a detailed and realistic infinite sea through a deep understanding of the instance ocean spectrum workflow, and then make things even more interesting by blending a flat tank flip simulation into the middle of it. By adding whitewater foam, spray, bubbles, mist, and then even more spray on top, we'll really make our speedboat zipping through the waves come alive. Along the way, we'll enjoy some technical demos, as well as talk about lighting, custom shading, common pitfalls, and many other tips and tricks. Get started Welcome back to Applied Houdini. Mastering Oceans in Houdini today with Applied Houdini Liquids 3, Ocean Flat Tank.
Mhm.
Have you ever wanted to add some handheld motion to your Houdini cameras? Well, stick around and I'll show you how. It's happening a little too often, like maybe the left and right. So, okay, this kind of feels a little bit more like the missile guidance system is trying to kind of stabilize.
Вино, вон там, карты какие-то. Вон целую эту соорудили даже освещение, не просто лампочкой. Нужно больше лампочек. Давайте 2 видео посмотрим, и так ничего не буду включать. То есть...
Created a rule or a set of things like I want to take an object and I want to twist it and then I want to bend it. Okay, this is fairly simple. You can probably do this in, like any software.
The little tweak here and a little tweak there is what begins to create this concept and idea of a flow of data. And networks can be packaged up into digital assets. And what that means is that you take the network we have doing your own work, or whether it's a node. These nodes get level interface can help you packaged up into digital assets. And what that means is that you take the network we have and you collapse it into a single node. That single node can then have a high-level interface built for it simply by dragging and dropping parameters from the nodes inside. And that high-level interface can help you as you then take it back into Houdini as a tool. And that interface will be used for that tool. Now, what's interesting here is all the complexity of the original node network still exists within the asset, but it's buried and locked down underneath. What's also neat is these digital assets can be built mainly through normal artist workflows. So you don't really have to be a programmer to make these kinds of tools. There's lots of programming opportunities if that's what you like, but it's not a necessity to build a digital asset. And the digital asset essentially becomes a tool. And it ends up being an equal partner within the Houdini environment to other nodes. And as a matter of fact, a lot of the Houdini tools that ship with the product and are up on the shelf, they're actually digital assets that we built to help you as you work. So this ability to make digital assets can work at many different levels. So pipeline in a box. This is the essence of the fact that everything in Houdini is about building these networks, building these recipes, and ultimately potentially packaging them up. So nodes that can put into networks and wrapped up into assets and then shared. And this can be a really powerful thing. And even if you're an individual artist, there's probably lots of repetitive work that you have to do to get a project through, from idea to reality. And having the ability to package up some of those workflows and speed things up can make a really big difference. So the first thing we're going to talk about is let's just talk about nodes. And we're going to create this sort of toy block. And in that, you'll be able to see how Houdini lays down the nodes and begins to create the networks that flow the data. So in the interface in Houdini, you've got the viewport. We're going to just put a cube down there. At first, we're putting something down at the what's called the object level, and we can resize it using some of these parameters up here to get the cube that we want. Then we can sort of zoom in, get a little closer to that. Now what we want to do is we want to select the top face of this so that we can do some poly extrude. And you'll notice this dropped us down into what's called the geometry level, where we manipulate geometry. And notice that the box had a node, and now the poly extrude had a node. And then the parameters sit on those different nodes. If I want to change the shape of this, I can put an edit node down, and I can take that and turn that into a circle. So I just right click on here and say make into a circle. And again, that edit is a node of itself. If I poly extrude again, I get another node. And this is the sort of flow of all the pieces that go into this. And I can at any point set the accurate parameter and work with that. Now what I'd like to do now is bevel some of the edges, but not all of the edges. So in order to get the ones that I want, I'm going to use a group. Oh, wait, sorry, before I get there, I got to put the hole at the bottom. So again, a couple more poly extrudes, just press Q to get that. Do a bit of an inset. And then Q again to extrude that again. And then that will allow me to push that up into there. And then put a value in there. Okay, so now that I have all this, I want to do some beveling of some of the edges. So rather than just select all the edges I want by hand, I'm going to use sort of a Houdini tool, the group node, to find the ones that I want. So when I first do it, I say I'm going to call this bevel underscore edges. By default, it uses the selection that I had, which was all edges, which I don't want that. So I'm going to turn that off. And then I'm going to go down here and I'm going to actually say, give me a minimum and maximum angle. And I'll make that basically 89 to 91. And because of that, you'll see that it's actually selecting all the sort of right angles, but not the shallower angles. So that gives me exactly the edges that I want to polybevel. And being able to do it with a group like this is sort of useful because even if the shape that I fed into it changed over time, it would always find the edges that I wanted no matter what. And that's something that makes something just a little bit more procedural. Type in a value for that. And we'll add in a little bit of detail, just make it round. And there we go. And this gives us our first block. And we can just look at that back at the object level. Let's just give that a name, single brick. And we can look at it with subdivision surface just to let's do that. And then select it and we'll just shift plus will allow us to look at it as a subdivision. And there we go. So we got one brick. And this was built using a series of nodes wired together to give us a flow of data. So the next thing that we're going to look at is networks. So what we're going to do is we're going to take Flip, this little guy here, and we're going to create a series of nodes that convert him into a brick version of the model. And you'll notice here that not only do we have the bricks in the shape of the creature, but also that the coloring of the texture map is going to get pulled over and applied to this as well. And so we can do this very simply using the nodes that we want to extend with here. So we'll hide the brick, bring in this shape. This is one of the test geometry shapes that we have with Houdini. And we'll just go in and just quickly clean this up a little bit. Let's make it a little bigger so that it suits the size of the bricks we have.
Как тут поворачивать-то, я не знаю. Наверное, никак. Меня все это в могилу сведет. Мышка ничего не делает.
Have and raise it up from the ground. And then we can look at that from the 4 different views. Just got to make sure that it's sitting on the ground nicely. And there we go, we're ready to go. Now, to make this into points, that's a fairly simple thing in Houdini. We have a tool to do that down at the geometry level, and it's called points from volume. So we just place that down, and the geometry feeds in, and it creates a whole series of points, which we can just highlight those in yellow, then you'll be able to see.
Даже не знаю, где это находится. А, наверное, на какую-то опять среднюю кнопку это поворачивать. Нихуя у меня не работает.
See them a little bit better. There we go. So you'll see that the points exist within the shape of the creature and not outside. So that will help us in the building of the bricks. So now that we've got that, let's go in and just change the name of that. And now we can take the points and the brick. And by selecting the two of them, we can combine them into a single network. And that will allow us to work with them a little bit more effectively. So using a tool up here called Combine, we combine those into the same network. And currently they're going into a merge node, so we're getting a bunch of points and a brick merged together. We don't want that. So we're going to delete that merge node, and we're going to replace it with a copy to points node. And this copy to points node, we can turn on pack instances. So this would be a more efficient way of copying geometry to the points. And there we go. Now it's looking a little bit wrong, and part of the reason here is that our volume to points was at 0.1 separation, but our bricks were 0.2, 0.2, 0.2. So if we change that to 0.2, that's looking much better. Now we're not seeing everything right now. We're only seeing the packed images right close, and that's because there's some display limitations. It's getting culled based on a polygon limit. So we can increase that to 50 million polygons. So, and that's, it'll display fine. Because we're using instancing, it's fast and it's
Эту хуйню добавить. В ignore list. Суки, блять. Суки, блять. Боты одни кругом.
So now let's take the nodes that made up the brick, and we're going to put them into just a box here, a network box, and that will allow us to take them and just collapse them because they're not really going to change that much at any point in the process, and we can simplify our network to make it easier to work with. You can organize any part of your network using these kinds of boxes, collapse them, just put it off to the side, you're ready to go. And now we can zoom in and we see that in essence we've got a brick on one side, we've got the flip on the other, the points, and then have the copy to points. So the next thing we want to do is let's just add some color into here. Now you notice that we're adding the colors to the points. We're not adding it at the end of the bricks. We're putting them on the bricks, and then the bricks are picking up they're picking up that color when they get instanced. So that works great in the viewport, but if we actually did a bit of a test render on that, we're going to find that it's not working from a rendering point of view quite yet. We have to do a couple other steps to get it to render properly. So the color attribute that we just placed in the network is not making it to the render. So the way that we do that is first we're going to create a material network, and we're going to put an actual material in there, because right now we're just using whatever the default material is in Houdini. And we want to bring in a principled shader. We're going to put that in that network, and we're going to call that brick material. And we're going to use that, drag that on, put that onto the geometry using a material node here. So we'll do this down at the geometry level. So we've got a material node, set the display on that, and basically tell that to go look at the material that we had. And there we go. Now, that made it darker gray, but it didn't bring our color over yet. There's a couple things that we need to do to make that to work. First is I don't want the darker gray. I'd like to have it a little bit lighter. So go back to here, go to the surface area, and we'll change that to let's say 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, and that lightens it up a little bit. Then there's a little checkbox here, use packed color. And once we check box that, the color attribute is now going to be passed on to the material and will be rendered properly. So that shows you how we can take advantage of that. So if you look back at the original illustration that I showed you, we had done this slightly differently. But before we get to that, what we want to do is we want to say, is the system we built robust enough to handle other kinds of shapes? So we're going to put a switch node in, and now we're going to bring over a platonic object, and we're going to feed that in the other side. We're going to just change the shape on that. You can sort of see it in wireframe here. We're going to change it to a Utah teapot and just raise that up a little bit from the ground. So the question is, if we feed that into the same system, will everything we've created so far follow through? Will the flow of data, will the recipe apply? So we go in and we change the input to 1, and there we go. We've got ourselves a teapot doing all the same things that we had with the rubber toy. So that's how sometimes when you're building up an asset like this, it's good to have this kind of little test to make sure that it can do what you need it to do. Now the next thing we want to do is, instead of just using the red color, we want to take the color from a texture map that came with the original model, and we want to use that texture map to drive the color on the creature. So this was originally a digital asset, and we can actually open up that digital asset, and if we go to one of the tabs here, if we go to the one called extra files, we can save that to disk, and we're going to put that in the texture folder right there in our project. We could pull it right from the digital asset, but having it on disk, you'll see later, especially when we do PDG, there's advantages to having it on disk. So then the question is, well, how do we get the texture map colors onto the points so that they can be passed on to the bricks? So the way we're going to do that is we're going to use VOPs, which is we have an expression language called VEX, and VOPs is an interactive way of building up this. And all we're going to do is we're going to put in a texture node. Now this is the same language we would use to write a shader in Houdini, but we can use it to deal with attributes and other things within the world of geometry. So we're actually going to bring in a texture map, and that's going to literally take the colors from the texture
Но вообще все это работает. Шейдер тоже бы не помешал. Ну... Он WebGL какой-то. Вода. На 60 строк-то она каким-то образом работает на самом деле. Понять бы, что все это такое. Когда это сейчас придет. Типа, как это объяснить? Труба тоже вся одним шейдером сделана. На 40 строк. Такое вообще может быть? Даже меньше. А должна же какая-то текстура быть. Хочу вот с этим разобраться, то есть как эти шейдеры работают. Тут же просто сюда же просто вписываешь, и оно должно работать. А, тут вот что, тут 3. Вот сама картинка-то где. Тут не 40 строк, а он дохуя. Э, Медь какая-то. М. Лагает, конечно. Конечно, у меня нет не RTX видеокарта, чтобы такую поддержать. В окне работает, а если на весь экран, то, видимо, работает в 4 раза медленнее. Вот 20 FPS нормально показывает. А на весь экран там, наверное, 5 FPS показывает, даже не показывает 5 FPS. Было бы что-нибудь максимально простое здесь, я не знаю. Вот эти вот квадраты, например. Типа вот квадраты мы хотя бы можно понять, что здесь происходит. То есть такая винамп визуализация. Даже и... Ух, заебись, как выглядит. Даже и это самое... И на весь экран заебись визуализация. Ну... Там картинка показывает или нет? Маздайна это только все руинит своими этими регистрациями, активациями. Интересно, а что в самом конце списка? Очень старая, он 13-й год. 7 лет прошло. Вот что хорошо, что здесь, сука, показывает те цвета, которые на самом деле. А то, что Twitch, что YouTube, они вот Там все цвета въебанные вот из этой компрессии. И даже никто и ничего не делает. Я не знаю насчет Vimeo, кстати, там тоже все так же плохо или нет. Но здесь, типа, что видеокарта показывает, она показывает красный цвет, она его и показывает тот красный, который тут и есть. Вот. И нету никакой, как бы, как это объяснить, ну, типа картинка без артефактов, вот абсолютно в том виде, в каком она есть, и поэтому это заебись выглядит. Типа вообще правильно, как-то правильно делать даже не видосики какие-то, а именно делать что-то вот подобное, да, то есть, как бы, потому что... Или хотя бы, чтобы мыло с глаз это самое, чтобы нормально было выглядело. Ну, просто на Твиче даже, если там никого нет, то есть никто не смотрит, но типа если на Твиче смотрят, то стоит понимать, что это выглядит не так, как вы, ну вот сейчас выглядит заебись, на Твиче будет хуево выглядеть, а на Ютубе будет дважды хуево выглядеть. Вот. Потому что и цвета, и битрейт и прочее, все пропадает. А новые кодеки нормальные никто не использует. Да и то они тоже не идеальные, наверное. Мне уже на старости лет вот таким заниматься уже я не освою. Я блендер-то этот не освою, а я вот про вот это уже тем более. Это слишком сложно. Вообще можно просто визуализацию поставить, как зеленый экран такой, да, то есть, типа, уже готово, типа, это самое, картинка красивая. Давайте поставим на 15. Типа тут ничего, типа визуализация, но здесь ничего абсолютно нет, то есть тут вон 150 строк кода всего лишь, то есть надо понимать, что как оно работает, каким образом. Все просто чудеса какие-то на самом деле. Океан, 17-й год. А, здесь еще передвигаться надо. Типа и даже, по-моему, и не лагает, и не лагает, и... Видеокарта даже работать не собирается, по-моему. Просто ультра дешево показывает. Что за GPU sound, кстати? Зеленая включ. Явно не SoundCloud. Как это самое, блядь. Заело, блядь, то есть компакт-диск. Так звучит примерно. А реально как-то можно звук туда запихнуть, я хз. Большой вопрос. Какого, что, блядь, что, как эта хуйня превращается в звук, блядь, я понять не могу. Это же шок просто. С Гудинь-то с этой, наверное, не скоро разберемся таким образом. Вон там Quake 1 какой-то. Ой, это пиздец. Такое ощущение, что, блядь, там... У меня аж мигрень началась от такого, блядь. Это эпилепсия, блядь. Какие-то отражения есть. Там какие-то фракталы ужасные. Здесь тоже. Тыц. Вообще, как бы вот, ну, блять, ну нихуя нету, блять, а графоний показывает, то есть. А типа бывают игры хуячит, там, блять. А графоний не показывает вообще нигде никакого, блять. Вот в чем смысл. Просто ужаснейшие фракталы какие-то. Прям как это самое. Как в аду оказались, в каком-то кибернетическом. Хотел вот в Unreal Engine тоже можно такие же фракталы сделать. Это по сути просто шейк. Ничто не мешает сделать такой фрактал. Но вот не знаю, насколько он будет приближаться. То есть, наверное, вот чтобы он прям вот процедурно еще приближался, как бы, то такой, наверное, нельзя. Это какой-то пререндер все-таки. Но на самом деле я не знаю, почему такое не используется в играх. То есть нигде не видел, чтобы использовалось. Может, просто я не играл в игры, где это есть. Но в таких вот тех, в которых я играл, нигде не было. Хотя никто не мешает. Никто не мешает что-то подобное запихнуть, хотя бы в качестве, не знаю, там какого-то делириумного бреда или не знаю. Там не обязательно локация, по которой бегать нужно. Да? Если по ней бегать нельзя, то есть типа есть просто платформа, по которой можно бегать, а все остальное это вот это вот. Вот то же самое пишут про игру. Как добавить сюда гравитацию и коллизию? Да никак, блядь. А нахуя добавлять в нее гравитацию и коллизию? Пускай просто вот так же вращается, просто как на зеленом экране. Я не знаю. У нас там 2 часа надо. 2 часа уже. 1,5. Все ошибки, ошибки. Ну, АФК надо, а потом и чаю, АФК, а потом уже и заканчивать. совсем берет свое. Вот еще минут 5 посмотрим и все, потому что надо прилечь, отдохнуть.
And apply them to the points on the surface. Now we want to promote one of the parameters up, so we're going to take the texture map, which has the default of mandrel, which is one of a default texture we come with, and we're going to promote that as a texture map, and that'll go up to this level here. You can see it right there, and we'll leave that texture map in for now. It'll work for testing purposes, and later we can replace it with the one we saved to disk. Now the first thing we have to do is this attribute is a vertex attribute, and we want to promote it to a point attribute. So the first node we do says take that and vertex attribute, make it into a point attribute. This is CD, which is color. Then what we want to do is we want to transfer that color based on distance from the model to the points. So we're going to wire the points from volume, and we're going to wire that in. And it's a little hard to see there, but you can see that the points now have color. And that color is coming from the texture map that is being promoted over. So the next thing is, just to give us a little more control, we're going to put another switch node down. That way we can choose between a plain flat color or a texture map, and this will become important later when we turn this into a tool, but it's just helpful from a workflow point of view here. So we got a thing called texture switch, and if we switch from 0 to 1, you'll see now we have the texture map from the mandrel pick being applied to the points on the surface. Now, if we go back, we can click onto here and we can go into our texture folder and get the texture, and there we go. Now we've taken the texture map specifically designed for flip, and we're applying that for rubber toy onto the bricks. Okay, so now that we have that, the next thing we want to do is build an asset, to create a tool out of this, which means taking the network we've got, collapsing it into a single node called a digital asset, which will function as a tool, a reusable tool that we can use in a bunch of different ways. So let's get right to it. So back in this network, we're going to select everything except for the teapot, because the make sure, and so everybody else. They just did the pipeline in a box. Here we just have to apply a shader and digital assets. One thing that's nice is when we go into Unreal Engine, we take advantage of their instancing. So this is still pretty snappy, even though there's tons of geometry here, but it's all properly instanced. So it looks pretty good, and it works in here just the way we need it to. So you come around, and there's my brickified shape within the Unreal Engine. And there are a lot of game studios using Houdini to create digital assets, to customize shapes and build things. It generates a cook, so it's the squad -1, and cook that in context. It's a little amazing that this same tool we built, and here's some of the iterations and possibilities. And this is where digital assets come in, because once you've got a good asset built, it offers iterations and possibilities and procedurally generated things that would be, a lot of work to build by hand over and over and over again. So lots of saved time, and this is where this idea of pipeline comes in. You're speeding up your pipeline, you're making it more efficient, you're automating things, and that's something that Houdini can give you. Between the texture, we cook that, Unity plugins and so on and so forth. So it's pretty grasp around the idea. Also, we'll have a whole disposal as a big. You can bring files, introduce PDG demo on.
Ой, все, надо прилечь, отдохнуть, то есть потом, может, еще включим.